The V3 had ruled the galaxy for 11 million years, and they had never known defeat in all that time. Their empire stretched across 100,000 star systems, and their fleets numbered in the millions, and every species they had ever encountered had either surrendered or been erased from existence. Fleet Admiral Keth Voran stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Silence, and watched the stars bend around him as his armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. 12,000 warships followed him, each one a crystal fortress larger than a mountain, each one carrying weapons that could crack planets in half. They had come for the small blue world that orbited the yellow star ahead of them. They had come for Earth. Admiral, his second officer said, "We are receiving the standard telemetry from our scouts." And what did they find? Keth Voran asked, though he already knew the answer would be disappointing. A primitive species, Admiral, barely capable of interstellar travel. Their fastest ships can only reach a fraction of light speed, and their weapons are based on nuclear fission and crude particle acceleration. Keth Voran made a sound that might have been a laugh if the Vithori had been capable of such things. Another young species that thought the universe was theirs to explore. He said, "How many does this make?" 7,412, Admiral. Since the beginning of the Great Harvest, the Vithori did not conquer in the way that younger species understood the word. They did not want slaves or resources or territory. They wanted knowledge, and they wanted silence. Every species they encountered was given a choice: surrender and be archived, which meant having their entire civilization recorded and preserved in the great libraries of the Concord homeworld before being peacefully eliminated, or resist and be erased without any record at all. Most species chose to be archived because at least that way something of them would survive. The humans would be no different. Broadcast the standard ultimatum, Keth Voran commanded, in all of their languages. The message went out across every frequency, in every human tongue, from Mandarin to English to Arabic to Spanish. The same words repeated over and over: surrender and be archived. Resist and be erased. You have one planetary rotation to decide on Earth. The message was received by every government, every military installation, every civilian communication device. Panic spread across the planet as people looked up at the sky and saw the distant lights of the alien armada. 12,000 points of cold fire hanging in the darkness, like the eyes of hungry gods. The United Earth Council met in emergency session in Geneva. Representatives from every nation crowded into the great chamber, their faces pale with fear. "We cannot fight them," the Secretary General said, her voice trembling. "Our entire fleet combined would not scratch their smallest ship. Then we surrender?" Someone shouted from the back of the room. "No," said a quiet voice. And everyone turned to look at the old woman who had spoken. She was small and frail, and her hair was white as snow. But her eyes burned with a fire that made even the bravest general step back. Her name was Dr. Elena Vasquez, and she was the oldest living human, 147 years old. Kept alive by medical technology that was itself based on secrets no one fully understood. "There is another way," she said. She walked slowly to the central podium, her cane tapping against the marble floor, and she placed her hand on the scanner that controlled the Council's secure database access file designation vigil. She said, "Authorization code. Remember." The lights in the chamber flickered, and every screen went dark. Then words appeared. Words in a language that no one recognized. Symbols that seemed to twist and shift when you looked at them directly. "What is this?" The Secretary General demanded. "This is our inheritance," Dr. Vasquez said. "This is the secret that has been passed down through my family for 8,000 years. Waiting for this day." She turned to face the assembly, and her old face was filled with something that might have been sorrow or might have been hope. "We are not alone," she said. "We have never been alone, and we have never been helpless." She pressed another button and the screens filled with images. Ancient cave paintings showing strange beings of silver light. Underwater structures built with technology that should not have existed 10,000 years ago. Genetic sequences hidden in human DNA that serve no apparent purpose. 8,000 years ago, Dr. Vasquez said, another species came to Earth. They were called the Architects, and they were refugees from a war they could not win. The Vithori, someone whispered. Yes. The Vithori found them, and they hunted them across the galaxy. And when the Architects finally crashed on our world, they knew they had nowhere left to run. Dr. Vasquez's voice grew stronger as she spoke, as if the words themselves were giving her strength. But they did not despair. Instead, they made a choice. They looked at the primitive humans who had welcomed them, who had shared food and shelter with these strange visitors from the sky. And they decided to give us a gift. What gift? The Secretary General asked. Everything, Dr. Vasquez said. They gave us everything. Their technology, their knowledge, their hope for the future. They encoded it in our DNA. They buried it beneath our oceans and our moons. They wove it into our very souls. She pointed at the ceiling, toward the stars, toward the distant moon of Jupiter called Europa. And they built us a guardian, she said. A weapon so powerful that even the Vithori learned to fear it. They called it the Vigil, and it has been sleeping beneath the ice of Europa for 8,000 years. Waiting. Waiting for what? Someone asked. Dr. Vasquez smiled, and for a moment, she did not look old at all. Waiting for us to need it, she said. Waiting for us to be ready. Waiting for this exact moment. She turned back to the console and typed in a final command. Send our response to the Vithori, she said. The message was short. Just 4 words, broadcast on every frequency. In every language the aliens had ever cataloged, we remembered the Vigil and his command chamber. Fleet Admiral Kethvarin read the human response and felt something he had not felt in 3 million years. He felt confused. What is the Vigil? He asked his officers. No one knew, but deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, in chambers that had not seen light since before the first human city was built, ancient machines began to stir. Power flowed through conduits older than human civilization. Lights flickered to life in the darkness, and something vast and patient and very, very powerful opened its eyes for the first time in 8,000 years. The Vigil was waking, and the Vithori had made a terrible mistake. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before the United Earth Council and told them the true history of humanity, the history that had been hidden for 8,000 years. In the beginning, she said, we were not special. The screens behind her showed images of ancient Earth. Green forests and blue oceans and primitive humans living in caves and hunting with stone tools. We were just another young species on a small world in an ordinary galaxy. We had fire and language and dreams. But we had no idea that the universe was full of beings far older and far more powerful than ourselves. She pressed a button and the images changed. Now the screen showed something falling from the sky. A massive ship trailing fire and smoke as it crashed into the ocean near what would one day become the coast of Africa 12,000 years ago. They came to us. The next images were cave paintings. Ancient art created by humans who had witnessed something beyond their understanding. The paintings showed tall figures made of flowing silver light. Beings with no fixed shape who could change their form like water. The Architects were old when the first stars were young, Dr. Vasquez said. They had traveled the universe for billions of years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched species evolve from single cells into gods. And the Vithori hunted them? The Secretary General asked. The Vithori hunt everyone eventually, Dr. Vasquez replied, her voice heavy with old anger. They believe that only one species should rule the universe and that all others should be archived and erased. They have been doing this for 11 million years. She showed them more images. Star systems burning, planets cracked open like eggs. Entire civilizations reduced to data files in the Vithori libraries. The architects fought back for millions of years, but they were losing. Slowly, one world at a time, one ship at a time, until finally they had nothing left but a single damaged vessel and a crew of 300 survivors. And they crashed on Earth, someone said. Yes, they crashed on Earth and they expected to die. They expected the Vithori to find them and finish what they had started. But something happened that they did not expect. Dr. Vasquez smiled, and her old eyes filled with tears. We helped them. The screens showed more cave paintings. Images of humans bringing food and water to the silver beings. Humans building shelters for creatures they could not possibly understand. Humans treating the wounded and comforting the dying. They were strangers from the stars, Dr. Vasquez said. They were strange and frightening, and they did not look anything like us. But when our ancestors saw that they were hurt and scared and alone, they did not run away, they did not attack. They reached out their hands in friendship. The chamber was silent as everyone listened. For 3,000 years, the architects lived among us. They taught us mathematics and astronomy and medicine. They helped us build the first cities and develop the first writing systems. They watched us grow from scattered tribes into the beginnings of civilization. But the Vithori found them. The Secretary General said, "The Vithori always find everyone." Dr. Vasquez replied, 8,000 years ago, a Vithori scout fleet entered our solar system. The architects knew they had only days before the main armada arrived. She paused and took a deep breath. They could have run. They could have taken their ship and fled to another galaxy. They were the only ones who knew the secret paths between the stars. They could have escaped and left us to face the Vithori alone. But they did not run. Someone whispered, "No, they did not run. Because in 3,000 years of living among us, they had come to love us. They had seen our kindness and our courage and our stubborn refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. And they decided that if they had to die, they would die protecting the species that had once protected them." Dr. Vasquez showed them the final images. Massive structures being built beneath the ocean and beneath the ice of Europa. Silver beings working alongside human workers to create something vast and powerful. They gave us everything, she said. They encoded their technology in our DNA so that one day we would be able to unlock it. They hid caches of knowledge all over the solar system so that one day we would find them. And they built the Vigil. What exactly is the Vigil? The Secretary General asked. It is a ship, Dr. Vasquez said. But that is like saying the sun is a fire or the ocean is a puddle. It is a ship built with technology so advanced that even the architects did not fully understand it. They poured every secret they had learned in billions of years of existence into its construction. She showed them the final image, a shape hidden beneath the ice of Europa. A shape so large that it dwarfed the moon itself. A shape made of angles and curves that seemed to twist reality around them. It is the most powerful weapon ever created, Dr. Vasquez said. And the architects programmed it to recognize only one species as its masters. Humanity, someone breathed. Yes. Humanity. They gave it to us because they believed in us. They believed that one day we would grow strong enough and wise enough to use it. They believed that we would remember their kindness and pass it on to other young species. She turned off the screens and faced the assembly 8,000 years ago. The architects fought the Vithori in our solar system. They bought us time with their lives. They held off the enemy fleet for 3 days while the Vigil finished its construction and sealed itself beneath the ice. They died for us, the Secretary General said. Every single one of them, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. 300 beings who had lived for millions of years gave their lives so that a species of cave dwellers could have a chance at survival. She walked to the window and looked up at the sky where the Vithori Armada hung like a necklace of cold stars. They did not know if we would ever need the vigil. They hoped that the Vithori would forget about us, that we would have time to grow and evolve and spread across the galaxy before they returned. But they came back. Someone said, "They always come back," Dr. Vasquez replied. "And now we must decide what to do. We can surrender and be archived and let the sacrifice of the architects mean nothing. Or we can wake the vigil and show the Vithori that they made a terrible mistake when they underestimated us." The Secretary General stood up, and her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "How do we wake it?" She asked. Dr. Vasquez reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal that glowed with soft silver light. "The architects left us a key," she said, "and the lock is on Europa. Someone has to go there and wake the vigil in person." "I will go," said a young pilot named Captain James Chun, standing up from his seat in the military section. "So will I," said his sister, Dr. Sarah Chun, a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying the mysterious structures beneath the Earth's oceans. Dr. Vasquez looked at them and nodded. "Then go quickly," she said. "The Vithori have given us 1 day to surrender. We must wake the vigil before that deadline passes." The Chun siblings left the chamber and headed for the fastest ship in the human fleet behind them. Dr. Vasquez looked up at the stars and whispered a prayer in a language that no human should have known. "We remember you," she said to the ghosts of the architects, "and we will make you proud." Captain James Chun pushed the engines of his ship to their absolute limit as he raced toward Europa. The small vessel was called the Hope, and it was the fastest ship humanity had ever built. Capable of reaching Jupiter in 12 hours at maximum acceleration. They did not have 12 hours. "The Vithori are moving," his sister Sarah reported from the sensor station. "Their advanced fleet is heading toward Earth. They will arrive in 6 hours. Then we need to be on Europa in 5, James replied. Pushing the throttle even further, the ship groaned around them as the engine screamed with effort. Behind them, the distant sun grew smaller and smaller, while ahead, the massive form of Jupiter grew larger in his command chamber on the eternal silence. Fleet Admiral Kethvorn watched the tiny human ship with mild curiosity. "They are heading for the ice moon," his second officer reported. "Let them go," Kethvorn said. "There is nothing on that frozen rock that can threaten us. Let them run and hide if it makes their final hours easier." He turned his attention back to Earth, to the blue world that would soon join 7,000 other species in the archives. The Vithori did not hate the species they harvested. They did not feel anger or cruelty or any of the emotions that drove younger races to war. They simply believed that the universe should be clean and quiet and orderly, one species ruling all things, one perfect silence among the stars. "Begin the approach," Kethvorn commanded. "We will accept their surrender in 6 hours, or we will begin the erasure. On the Hope." James and Sarah watched the Vithori fleet begin to move. "They are not following us," Sarah said with surprise. "They think we are running away," James replied. "They think we are no threat at all. Are we?" Sarah asked quietly. James thought about the crystal key in his pocket, the key that Dr. Vasquez had given them, the key that supposedly could wake a weapon powerful enough to fight the Vithori. "I guess we are about to find out," he said. They reached Europa 2 hours ahead of schedule. Burning through their fuel reserves with reckless abandon, the moon was a ball of cracked ice, its surface covered with deep grooves and ridges where the gravitational pull of Jupiter constantly flexed and twisted the frozen crust. "The entrance should be at these coordinates," Sarah said, reading from Dr. Vasquez's data. "There is a natural fissure in the ice that leads down to a liquid ocean below." "And the vigil is under that ocean?" James asked. "According to the records." "Yes. They brought the Hope down to the surface, landing on a flat plain of ancient ice. The ground beneath them was 3 kilometers thick, and below that was an ocean of liquid water kept warm by volcanic vents on the moon's core. "How do we get down there?" James asked Sarah, pointed at the crystal key in his hand. "Dr. Vasquez said the key will show us the way." James held up the crystal, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the crystal began to glow, brighter and brighter until it was painful to look at. And a beam of silver light shot from its core and struck the ice in front of them. The ice began to melt, not slowly like ice normally melts, but instantly, as if the light was erasing it from existence. A tunnel formed before their eyes, a perfect cylinder of clear air leading down through 3 kilometers of frozen water. "I think that is our invitation," Sarah said. They put on their environment suits and stepped out of the ship. The gravity on Europa was weak, less than 1/7 of Earth's, and they had to walk carefully to avoid bouncing away into the black sky. The tunnel was warm despite the ice around it, and they walked down its sloping floor for what felt like hours. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber of liquid water, but the water was held back by invisible walls of force, creating a dome of breathable air in the middle of an underground ocean. And in the center of that dome sat the Vigil. It was larger than anything James had ever seen, larger than any space station or ship or structure humanity had ever built. It stretched away in every direction until it disappeared into the darkness of the deep ocean. Its surface was black, blacker than space itself, and covered with geometric patterns that seemed to move and shift when he looked at them. "It is beautiful," Sarah whispered. James held up the crystal key, and the Vigil responded. Lights began to appear on its surface. First a few, and then hundreds, and then millions, racing across the vast hull like stars being born. The patterns began to glow with silver light, and the entire structure began to hum with power. Then a voice spoke. It was not a human voice, and it was not the voice of any species James had ever heard. It was something older and stranger, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am the Vigil," the voice said. "I am the last gift of the architects to the children of Earth. I have waited 8,000 years for this moment." James found his voice somehow. "We need your help," he said. "The Vithori have come. I know," the Vigil replied. "I have been watching. I have been waiting. I have been hoping that this day would never come. But I have also been preparing for it." The lights on the Vigil's surface began to pulse faster. "The architects loved your species," the voice continued. "They saw something in you that they had not seen in any other race in all their billions of years of existence. They saw kindness without expectation of reward. They saw courage in the face of impossible odds. They saw a species that would help strangers simply because helping was the right thing to do." Sarah was crying now, tears floating in the low gravity like tiny crystals. "They gave everything they had to protect you," the Vigil said. "And now I will do the same, but I must ask you something first." "What?" James asked. "Do you understand what you are waking?" The voice asked. "I am not just a weapon. I am a responsibility. If you use me to defeat the Vithori, you will become visible to every species in the galaxy. You will have to choose what kind of civilization you want to be." James looked at his sister, and she looked back at him. "We choose to be like the architects," he said. "We choose to help others. We choose to protect the weak. We choose to be worthy of the gift they gave us." The Vigil was silent for a long moment. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it sounded almost happy. "That is the answer I was hoping for." The entire structure began to rise, pushing up through the ocean, cracking through the ice above, emerging from Europa's surface like a god being born from the frozen womb of a moon. The Vigil was awake, and it was angry on the eternal silence. Fleet Admiral Kethvorin watched his sensors with growing disbelief as something impossible emerged from the ice moon. "What is that?" he demanded. No one answered because no one knew, but deep in the oldest files of the Vithori archives, in records that had not been accessed for 8 million years. There was a single entry that read, "If you ever encounter the Vigil, run." Kethvorin did not run. That would prove to be his final mistake. The Vigil rose from Europa like a mountain emerging from the sea. It was so large that it had its own gravity, so massive that the moon's orbit shifted slightly as it departed. Its black hull stretched across the sky of Jupiter's system like a wall of darkness painted with silver. Firefleet Admiral Kethvorin watched it approach, and for the first time in 3 million years he felt something. That might have been fear. All ships, target that structure, he commanded. Full weapons release. 12,000 Vithori warships opened fire at once. Beams of compressed light that could slice planets in half. Missiles carrying antimatter warheads powerful enough to ignite gas giants. Gravity weapons that could crush matter into neutron star density. Everything the Vithori had developed in 11 million years of conquest was unleashed upon the Vigil. The universe screamed with released energy. Stars dimmed in the distance as the weapon's fire lit up. The solar system brighter than the sun itself. And when the light faded and the sensors cleared, the Vigil was untouched. Not a scratch on its impossible hull, not a flicker in its silver patterns. It continued its slow advance as if 12,000 warships had thrown nothing more threatening than snowflakes. Impossible. Kethvorin whispered. The Vigil spoke, its voice broadcast on every frequency. In every language the Vithori had ever catalogued. In tongues that had been dead for millions of years. In mathematical sequences that conveyed meaning beyond words. "I am the last word of the architects," it said. "I am the promise kept across 10,000 generations. I am the sword left in the stone until the children were ready to draw it." The Vigil's weapons powered up. James and Sarah Chun watched from inside the Vigil's control chamber. A vast space filled with holographic displays showing the entire battle in perfect detail. "How is this possible?" Sarah asked. "Their weapons should have destroyed us. The architects spent billions of years learning the secrets of the universe." The Vigil's voice replied. "They learned how to fold space, how to bend time, how to create shields that exist in dimensions the Vithori cannot even perceive. Their weapons pass through me like light passes through glass." "And your weapons?" James asked. "My weapons do not pass through anything," the Vigil said. And there was something cold in its voice now. "My weapons erase. The first beam fired, it was not light and it was not energy and it was not matter. It was something else entirely. A ray of absolute negation that simply removed everything it touched from existence. The beam struck the nearest Vithori cruiser and the ship vanished, not exploded, not destroyed, simply vanished as if it had never existed. One moment it was there, and the next moment there was nothing but empty space where it had been. The Vithori fleet reacted with panic. Ships tried to scatter, tried to flee, tried to activate their hyperspace drives and escape to the safety of distant stars. But the Vigil was faster. Beam after beam of impossible destruction lanced out across the battlefield, each one finding a target, each one erasing another ship from reality. "This is slaughter," Sarah said quietly. "No," the Vigil replied. "This is justice. These ships have done the same thing to 10,000 other species. They have erased civilizations that were older than your sun. They have murdered trillions of sentient beings. This is the reckoning they have avoided for 11 million years." But even as it fought, the Vigil was doing something else across the solar system. On every human ship and station and colony, screens flickered to life with new data. Blueprints and schematics and technical specifications for technology that humanity had never dreamed of. "What is this?" Admiral Morrison asked from the bridge of the Earth Defense flagship. The answer came from the Vigil itself. "This is your inheritance," it said. "The architects encoded this knowledge in your DNA 8,000 years ago. But it was locked away, waiting for the right moment to be released. That moment is now. Human engineers stared at the blueprints in disbelief. Shield generators that could stop any weapon. Engines that could cross the galaxy in hours. Power sources that drew energy from the fabric of space itself. Weapons that could match the Vithori's own. We can build these. Someone said with wonder. You can build these in hours. The Vigil confirmed. The construction nanomachines were also part of your inheritance. They have been dormant in your blood for 8,000 years. Now they are awake, across Earth and Mars and the Moon and every human colony. People discovered that they could suddenly do things they had never been able to do before. A factory worker touched a piece of raw metal and watched it reshape itself into a perfect engine component. A scientist thought about a problem that had puzzled her for years and suddenly understood the solution with perfect clarity. A child drew a picture of a spaceship, and the paper began to glow. As the image tried to make itself real, the architects had not just left humanity a weapon. They had left humanity a transformation. You were always meant for more than this small corner of the galaxy, the Vigil said as it continued its destruction of the Vithori fleet. The architects saw your potential, and they gave you the tools to reach it. But they also left you a choice. What choice? James asked. The choice of what kind of species you will become, the Vigil replied. You can use these gifts to conquer as the Vithori conquer. You can become the new rulers of a silent galaxy. Or you can use them to protect as the architects protected. You can become guardians instead of tyrants. On his dying flagship, Fleet Admiral Kethvorin watched the last of his fleet disappear. Of the 12,000 ships that had entered the solar system, fewer than 100 remained. And they were running, abandoning their admiral, abandoning their mission, fleeing into hyperspace with the desperate speed of those who have seen true power for the first time. Kethvoran's ship was too damaged to flee. You have won, he said to the Vigil. Is that not enough for you? No, the Vigil replied. Winning is not enough. Understanding is necessary. You will return to your Concord, and you will tell them what happened here. You will tell them that the children of Earth are no longer helpless. You will tell them that if they ever threaten another young species, we will find them. You would protect others? Kethvorin asked with genuine confusion. Even species that are not your own? That is what the architects taught us, the Vigil said. That is what makes us human. The Vigil's weapons powered down and Kethvorin's ship was allowed to limp away into hyperspace, carrying its message of defeat back to the Concord homeworld. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But as James and Sarah looked at the transformed solar system around them, at the new ships being built and the new technology being mastered, and the new future stretching out before their species, they understood that the battle had only been the beginning. The real challenge was still to come. They had been given the power of gods. Now they had to prove they deserved it. 1 year after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy was a different place. The Vithori Concord had retreated to their core systems, afraid for the first time in 11 million years. Their fleets no longer roamed the stars looking for species to harvest, and their archives sat unopened as they debated what to do about the impossible species from the small blue world humanity had changed as well. The gifts of the architects had transformed human civilization in ways that would have seemed like magic just 12 months before. Ships that could cross the galaxy in days, cities that floated among the clouds of gas giants, habitats that could terraform dead worlds in weeks instead of centuries. But the greatest change was not technological, it was philosophical. The United Earth Council had become the United Humanity Assembly, and they had made a decision that would echo across the stars for millennia to come. They would not become the new Vithori. They would become something better. The Vigil hung in orbit around Earth. Its vast bulk, casting a shadow that could be seen from every continent. It had not spoken since the battle ended. Its silver patterns dim and quiet, as if it was waiting for something. James Chun stood on the observation deck of the Vigil and looked down at his homeworld. Sarah stood beside him, and together they watched the sun rise over the Pacific Ocean. "It is beautiful," Sarah said. "It always was," James replied. "We just forgot to look." A soft chime announced a visitor, and they turned to see Dr. Vasquez walking toward them. The old woman moved without her cane now, another gift of the architect technology that had healed her ancient bones. "The assembly has made their decision," she said. "And?" James asked. Dr. Vasquez smiled, and it was a smile of pure joy. "We are going to find them," she said. "Every young species the Vithori overlooked. Every civilization hiding in fear of the harvest. We are going to find them, and we are going to help them." The Vigil's patterns began to glow. "That is the answer I was hoping for," its voice said. And for the first time, it sounded something like happy. The vast ship systems hummed to life, and holographic displays appeared in the air around them, showing star maps and species profiles and 100 worlds where young civilizations huddled in the darkness, afraid of what lurked among the stars. "The architects gave you a choice," the Vigil said. "And you have chosen well. But before you begin this new chapter of your history, there is one final gift I must give you." "Another weapon?" James asked. "No," the Vigil replied. "A memory." The air shimmered, and a figure appeared before them. A being of flowing silver light with no fixed shape. Beautiful and strange and somehow incredibly kind, James realized he was looking at an architect. "My name is Kalthara," the figure said in a voice like wind chimes, "and I am recording this message in the final hours before the Vithori find us. I do not know if anyone will ever see it. I do not know if the children we have come to love will survive what is coming, but I hope. I hope with everything I am." The image flickered, and James could see exhaustion in the architect's form. The weariness of a being who had fought for millions of years and was finally running out of strength. "We crashed on your world by accident," Kalthara continued. "We expected to find nothing but primitive animals, and instead we found you. You were so young, so fragile. You had no technology and no weapons and no way to understand what we were. And yet when you saw us wounded and afraid, you did not run away." Tears ran down Dr. Vasquez's face. "You brought us food when we were hungry. You brought us water when we were thirsty. You sat with us through the long nights when we were afraid. You could not understand our language, and we could not understand yours. But you understood something more important." The architect's voice grew softer. "You understood that we needed help. And you helped us, not because you expected anything in return, not because you were afraid of us, but simply because helping those in need was the right thing to do. In billions of years of traveling the universe, we had never encountered a species like you." Kalthara's image looked directly at James, and he felt as if the ancient being could see him across the gulf of 8,000 years. The Vithori believe that the universe belongs to the strong. They believe that kindness is weakness and compassion is foolishness, and the only law that matters is survival. But you taught us that they are wrong. You taught us that the universe belongs to those who care for each other. You taught us that true strength is not the power to destroy, but the courage to protect. You taught us that love is not weakness, but the greatest force in all of existence." The architect began to fade. "We give you everything we have," Kalthara said. "Not because we expect you to conquer the galaxy in our name, but because we believe you will do something far more important. We believe you will teach others what you taught us." The image flickered one final time. "Be kind," the architect whispered. "Be brave. Be the light in the darkness that we could not be. And know that wherever we are, whatever has become of us, we love you. We have always loved you. From the first moment you reached out your hands in friendship to strangers who fell from the sky. The image vanished. The observation deck was silent as the humans tried to process what they had heard. Then Dr. Vasquez laughed. It was a laugh of pure joy. A laugh of release. A laugh of someone who had carried a secret for her entire life and finally saw it fulfilled. "We will make them proud," she said. James looked at his sister, and Sarah looked at her brother, and together they nodded. 1 month later, the first human guardian fleet departed from Earth. It was not an armada of conquest, but a fleet of hope, carrying teachers and doctors and engineers, carrying technology and knowledge and seeds and medicine, carrying the message that the architects had given their lives to deliver. You are not alone. The universe is vast and dark and full of dangers, but you do not have to face them by yourselves. There are beings out there who will help you simply because helping is the right thing to do. The first species they found was a race of small furry beings on a world circling a red dwarf star. They were barely past the Stone Age, and they looked up at the human ships with the same mixture of fear and wonder that ancient humans had once shown to the architects. James Chun walked down the ramp of his landing craft and knelt in the soft grass of this alien world. One of the small beings crept forward. Trembling with fear but driven by curiosity, James held out his hand. The being reached out its own small paw and across the galaxy. The visual watched and smiled. The architects had built it to be a weapon, but humanity had made it something better. They had made it a witness to kindness, and in the end, that was the greatest weapon of all. Not the power to destroy, but the courage to love. Not the strength to conquer, but the wisdom to protect. Not the ambition to rule, but the humility to serve. The Vithori had ruled the galaxy through fear for 11 million years. Humanity would show them a different way, and one by one, star by star, species by species, the darkness would give way to light. The architects had not died in vain. Their children had grown up, and they had made them proud. The end.